Hello, friends. It's me, Beth. And boy, do I have a treat for you today. This is a cheesy jalapeno cornbread recipe that my grandma, the one you have not met yet, used to make for us. I have a lot of photos that deal with this recipe, state fair, cooking with my daughter, grandma. You'll see it all here coming up throughout the video. But let's start with the first 5 ingredients that are dry ingredients. I always have these on hand in my stockpile. First up, 1 cup of yellow cornmeal. Grandma prefers the Aunt Jemima, so I did use that today. Then next up, a half a cup of all-purpose flour. We're only going to need a half a teaspoon of sugar. Follow that up with a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And then last on the list for the dry ingredients, 1 teaspoon of salt. So only 5 dry ingredients in this recipe, and I always have them on hand. It's fairly inexpensive to make for the amount of flavor you'll get. So we'll get this stirred up, and then we'll move on to the wet ingredient bowl. Now, I get so nervous doing this on camera. You'll see here in a minute. I forgot to get out a spatula, but you know, that's why I don't do cooking videos very often. It's not my cup of tea. So let's move on to bowl number 2. We're going to start with 1 cup of buttermilk. Now, I'll tell you, I've made this recipe well over 100 times, and 90% of the time I do not have buttermilk. So my other grandma told me to use a cup of whole milk and add a splash of vinegar if you don't have buttermilk. And so that's what I did today. Then you're going to need 1 cup of cream corn. Now, I do not measure this. I just kind of guess it. It's like I said, a forgiving recipe. If I have 3/4 of a cup or I have a whole cup, it won't matter with the cream corn. Now, I have used my freezer corn before, and it still tasted good, but the texture wasn't the same. Then you're going to need 1/4 a pound of cheese. I happen to have Colby Jack, so that's what I used. I needed to use this last bit of Colby Jack up. Grandma says to use 1/4 a pound of cheddar. So the cheddar is better, I'm not going to lie. And also I should add that I don't know if that was 1/4 a pound. Once again, it's a very forgiving recipe. And I'll show you the recipe card so you know what you're really, the actual recipe that my grandma always followed to a T says. So we have a half a cup of, 1 medium chopped onion. Jumping ahead here. And I used a sweet Vidalia. That's normally what I use. And now is when I'm supposed to be using a half a cup of vegetable oil. But I did not have a cup ready. And so I scrambled to rinse out that milk cup real quick. And in the meantime, I figured I would share with you a clip of my grandma. Now, grandma's memory isn't the best these days, but she always remembers to read her Bible.
Verse says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?
Whom shall you fear? No one.
No one, that's right.
Grandma always remembers to pray before she eats too. And Grandma still remembers that she does not eat pork. So those are 3 things she is really good at remembering. Also, we're going to move ahead after that cup of half a cup of vegetable oil. We're going to need some jalapenos. I used 3 small jalapenos without the seeds. Grandma and Grandpa, they liked it spicy, so they would use 3 jalapenos with the seeds. And they'd use bigger jalapenos than I used. And then last on the list for these wet ingredients, 2 eggs from right here off the farm. Beat them just a little bit, Grandma says. So these are our wet ingredients. The jalapenos, I always have those in the freezer. I usually have diced up onions in the freezer as well if I don't have any fresh on hand. So all of these things I usually have right here in the house. You know, I keep cheese in the freezer. So this is one of those recipes that at any time I can usually whip it up without any issue. Now you're going to add your wet ingredients to the dry ingredients. And here's where you can see I did not have the spatula ready, but you know, I'm just going to go with it and act like I know what I'm doing. We'll mix this up right here. Look at those bubbles. Sometimes it bubbles a lot more than other times, and I don't know if that has to do with the freshness of my soda or whatever, but this time it was really bubbling nicely. We'll get that stirred in real nice, and we'll get a glass pan. Grandma uses a metal pan because she likes hers to have a really crispy edge. I prefer the glass pan. It gets plenty enough crispy on there for me. I'm going to bake this in case I forget to tell you. I personally bake it in a glass pan at 425 for 25 minutes because I have propane heat and that usually does it. Grandma had electric stove, and it was her original electric stove. So this thing, I don't think her and I had the same temperatures we would bake on or the same kind of time because simply we had different kinds of heat. So I am going to pour this in my glass pan, and like I said, it's going to be at 425 for 25 minutes. Usually gets me to exactly where I want to be. And I do not preheat the oven. I don't preheat it. My oven gets hot pretty quick. So if you have an oven that does not, you might have to go the full 30 minutes like my grandma did. She'd cook hers for 30. Mine's good at 25. So we'll get the bowl scraped, and I'll show you how this comes out of the oven. It is a glorious sight, which I guess you did get a glimpse of it here at the beginning of the video. We'll spread this out nicely and see what we end up with. Now, my grandpa and grandma, they ate soup beans every day. And when I say every day, I mean every day. It was a choice. They thought it was healthy, and it saved them some money. And grandma was making this at one point more than once a week, twice a week, and she would bring us some. I think sometimes when she made it, she might have made 2 batches because she'd bring us a whole tray. We absolutely loved it. This is what it looks like after you get a slice cut out of the pan. Now, this is still hot, so it's pretty moist, but after a half hour, the consistency on this is absolutely perfect. I like to let it set actually about a half hour or so before I eat it. Anyways, this, the money shot right there. It is so good.
Happy.
Yeah, good.
That's a good sandwich.
This is a good sandwich, sis.
All right.
That's right there how that makes me feel happy. And Grandma, she knows good food. Let me tell you, that was her actually eating a quarter pounder. Grandma has enjoyed these last, especially year or two. She has a thing for quarter pounders and Whoppers. I don't know what it is. The doctor said she needs to keep her weight up. So he told her, go ahead and eat as many as she wants. And let me tell you, she does. And she takes them home, eats some Lay's potato chips with it. I absolutely love it. Usually has a cup of coffee with her sandwich. So this is Grandma way back when. This is 20 years ago. I took this photo. She doesn't look real happy. I would have taken a second photo now, with the digital camera. Grandma was a very happy and sweet person. I've never heard her say a mean or bad thing. There are the ribbons they earned. You can see they're faded. And there's her recipe card with her handwriting.
That dance again. Oh, there you go. There you got it.